The Leper King Baldwin IV. Introduction. The Leper King Baldwin IV was one of the most fascinating and tragic figures of the Crusades. A young man afflicted with leprosy, Baldwin became king of Jerusalem at the age of 13 and went on to lead his kingdom in a series of daring military campaigns against the Muslim forces. Despite his brave efforts, Baldwin's kingdom was ultimately overrun by the Muslims, and he died a tragic and premature death. In this video, we'll explore Baldwin's life, his legacy, and the lessons we can learn from his story. So watch the video until the end. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Baldwin IV was one of the most famous and controversial kings of medieval Europe. He ruled the Kingdom of Jerusalem during the height of the Crusades and was known for his military successes as well as his religious tolerance. Baldwin IV was born in 1161. He was the son of Almaric I of Jerusalem and Agnes of Courtenay. He was named after his grandfather, Baldwin III. Baldwin IV became king of Jerusalem on March 14, 1174, upon the death of his father, Almaric I. Baldwin was only 13 years old at the time, so his mother, Agnes of Courtenay, served as regent until he came of age. He was also afflicted with leprosy disease from an early age. He was the first leper king of Jerusalem, as he was afflicted with leprosy from an early age. The disease caused him to go blind in one eye and left him with severe disfigurement. Baldwin IV's illness was a debilitating condition that caused him to be dependent on others for his care. Baldwin was unable to care for himself and needed around-the-clock assistance from his family and caregivers. This dependence caused Baldwin to be very isolated and lonely, as he was unable to participate in many activities that he once enjoyed. Baldwin IV was a brave and skillful military commander, leading his kingdom to victory in several key battles against the Muslim forces that were trying to conquer the Holy Land. Despite his debilitating illness, Baldwin IV was a brave and determined ruler who defended Jerusalem against the Crusaders. Baldwin IV studied under Josias, the Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem. Josias was a French scholar and theologian who had been a friend of Baldwin IV's mother when she lived in France. He taught her son how to write, read, and speak Latin fluently, as well as Greek and Hebrew, the languages spoken by Jews. The period between 1174 and 1185 is often referred to as the Baldwin era. This is because it was during the time that Baldwin IV took over as king of Jerusalem, becoming its first ruler since 1080. The name for this period comes from Baldwin IV himself. He called it the Time of Baldwin. He also chose not to use his father's title, Count of Edessa, at all, instead referring to himself as Count Hugh II. However, some historians believe that he did use it in private correspondence with other nobles, such as Roger II de Payens, Roger I. Baldwin IV's early reign was marked by several positive developments. One of the most significant was his efforts to improve the kingdom's finances. He instituted new taxes and increased trade, which helped to stabilize the kingdom's finances and made it less dependent on donations from the church. Baldwin IV also worked to improve the kingdom's relations with its neighbors. He made peace with Damascus and signed a treaty with the Kingdom of Jerusalem. These actions helped to solidify the Crusader states and made them less likely to be attacked by their Muslim neighbors. Baldwin IV's early reign was a period of positive development for the Kingdom of Jerusalem. His efforts to improve the kingdom's finances and relations with its neighbors helped to solidify the Crusader states and made them more stable and prosperous. But Baldwin IV's early reign was also marked by several negative events that would ultimately lead to his downfall. Baldwin was unable to control the powerful nobles that ruled the Kingdom of Jerusalem. This led to a number of political disputes and outright rebellions. Also, his health began to decline, and he eventually became blind. This made it difficult for him to continue leading the kingdom and left it vulnerable to attack. Baldwin was also constantly at war with the Muslim states surrounding the kingdom. This not only drained the kingdom's resources, but also led to the capture and death of many Crusader knights, and the final battle which Baldwin IV fought was the Battle of Montgisard. The Battle of Montgisard was fought between the forces led by King Baldwin IV of Jerusalem and Saladin, who controlled most of Syria. It took place near Ramla in 1177 AD. Saladin believed that he would have an easy time overpowering the weakened armies of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Saladin had also been told that King Baldwin's army was weak and inexperienced. He also knew that the Crusaders were gathering an army to attack him. Saladin knew that this would be his last chance at victory, so he decided not to risk losing the momentum gained in their previous battles. Saladin ordered his soldiers to prepare for battle, and there was no stopping them now. But he was wrong. The Crusaders had secretly amassed their army to prepare for this attack, and now, with surprise and great force, they attacked Saladin's army. They were able to surprise Saladin and his army, who were caught off guard by the sudden appearance of their enemy soldiers. After being defeated in battle, Saladin retreated back to Egypt. The Battle of Montgessard was a turning point in the Third Crusade, and it was Baldwin IV who led his army to victory. He was a skilled leader with a well-trained army that could be trusted to follow his orders without question. However, Saladin's forces were not unprepared for this attack. They had been waiting for months for an opportunity like this one. The King of Jerusalem was very well prepared with his troops and weapons. He knew exactly how many men he would need to defeat Baldwin IV's army if they were going head-to-head in battle, and they were. Baldwin IV knew this too. He knew that if he didn't win at Montgessard first, then there would be no way that Saladin wouldn't eventually invade Jerusalem itself. Now, after the Battle of Montgessard, another military conflict took place from 1177 to 1178, the Siege of Sidon. The Crusader Kingdom of Jerusalem, under the leadership of King Baldwin IV, laid siege to the city of Sidon in an attempt to conquer it. The city was defended by the Sultan of Egypt, Saladin. The siege lasted for almost a year and was ultimately unsuccessful. The Crusaders were forced to retreat, and the city of Sidon remained under Muslim control. Despite the failure of the siege, the Crusaders continued for many more years. After the Siege of Sidon, the Battle of Marj Uyen in 1178 was a turning point in the wars between the Christian Kingdom of Jerusalem and the Muslim Ayyubid dynasty. It was one of the largest and bloodiest battles of the Crusades, with both sides suffering heavy losses. The Christians were ultimately victorious, but the cost of victory was high. The battle was fought over control of the strategic city of Marj Uyen, which was located in present-day Lebanon. The city was of great importance to both sides, as it controlled the main route between Damascus and Cairo. The Ayyubid Sultan, Saladin, realized that if he could take the city, he would be able to cut off the Crusaders' supply lines and force them to retreat. The Christians, led by King Baldwin IV, were determined to hold on to the city. In 1179, Baldwin IV of Jerusalem fought against the Egyptian army of Saladin at the Battle of Falta. The Egyptian army was vastly outnumbered, but Baldwin's forces were ultimately victorious. This battle was a turning point in the Crusades, as it showed that the Crusaders could win against the Muslims despite being outnumbered. The Battle of Falta was a significant victory for the Crusaders and helped to keep Jerusalem under Christian control. However, the Muslims would eventually retake the city in 1187. The Crusades would continue for many more years, but the Battle of Falta was an important moment in this long and bloody conflict. In the final years of his life, Baldwin IV faced increasing challenges from both inside and outside his kingdom. His health was failing, and he was unable to lead his troops into battle. Meanwhile, the Saracens were slowly encroaching on Baldwin's territory and posed a serious threat to the kingdom. In 1183, Baldwin IV finally succumbed to his illness and died. With his death, the Kingdom of Jerusalem was left in a precarious position. He is an example of how someone with a debilitating illness can achieve great things. Baldwin was diagnosed with leprosy at the age of 16 and was given only a few years to live. Despite this, he went on to lead his army to victory in several key battles during the Crusades. He also did much to improve the kingdom during his reign, such as building new castles and establishing a stable currency. Baldwin IV is an inspiration to all those who face adversity in their lives. He showed that even though life may deal you a difficult hand, it is still possible to achieve great things. And there you have it. We hope you enjoyed our video, and if you have any questions or comments, we'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.